What's up, guys? We've got another episode of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Show. We've got some awesome members from the Sanctum Squad back again. So, how's everyone doing today?
Doing well. Thank you for having us once again, Fabs. For those who don't know, this is Dan and Nate from the Sanctum Squad. Please like and subscribe as we're trying to hit a higher amount of subscribers than we currently got. So, yeah.
It's the dream. It's the dream. It's the dream.
It is the dream, mate, yeah.
All right. So, guys, we've had a pretty big change since the last podcast. The ban list was released. So what I'll do is I'll quickly go through it, and then I guess we can discuss what our thoughts are. So the bans were Snow was banned, Ronin Tonin banned, Hulk banned, Chaos Ruler banned, Red Reboot banned. Then we had Steam the Cloak and Cyberjar come back to 1. O-Lion also came back to 1. Substance Toad came back to 1. Spellbook of Judgment came back to 1, and the Point of Red Lotus went down to 1. And then Dynamite Knight, Ben 10, Shooting Riser, Fusion Destiny, Nadir Servant, Light Stage, and Wall of Revealing Light all went back up to 3, and that'll be on the screen so you guys can see it. So yeah, guys, what do we think about the ban list? What's our opinions?
So the ban list was interesting. Kind of sad in general because of like every single card that got banned was in the list I played the day before.
Must have been a bittersweet victory, but
it was very sad. But I think we did a discussion video about it, and we ended up talking about like all the cards that needed to be banned, and Hulk and Chaos Ruler were definitely in that list because Ruler allows so many decks now in the meta to plus because you're milling 5, choose card that you want to add back to your hand, and then, for example, if you're playing a deck like Tears, those effects then proc, which is quite nice when you're literally just trying to mill the deck through and get to the card that you want to see.
Yeah.
Ronin hit was definitely necessary. I feel like in the OCG, because they banned Toad, it still allowed the Frog engine to be played, whilst Ronin basically makes that entire makes that entire engine very difficult to play with.
Less efficient. Yeah, I'm of the opinion that I actually think that Sprite players should just drop Toad completely. I'm seeing a lot of Sprite players really trying to force Toad in and still play it. I feel like it's not a bad card, but I think part of what made it so good before was the fact that it was so low commitment to get to it, and I don't really see a point in still playing Toad. I think
the payout's not worth it. I don't think.
Just play the experience of Sprite, in my opinion.
Yeah, my honest thoughts. Oh, sorry, Nathan, go on.
It made the Frog engine splashable. That was the worst thing about it, because you could literally go into any level. Like, for example, with the list that we played on in the OTS Dudley tournament, we ended up going with How to summon out Plague, and then go into Gigantic, summon out the Frog that way. So, because of that, any deck that could basically have a level 2 and a link 2 could just make Gigantic and still end on the board of Elf Toad.
Yeah, which is quite insane when you think about it, actually. Like, yeah, that's insane that any deck can pretty much just do that. I don't really think it's fair either.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, I don't think it's ideal. So yeah,
I think this ban list was just not enough. If you want my completely honest answer, I think a lot of the hits that were made were right, but I also think that there was a lot of things that should have been hit as well. Curious 100% should have gone. Mystic Mine should have gone. I don't know why that's still legal, but there we are. Yeah. I think the actual correct hit to Sprite would have been to put Elf to 1 and then mitigate the Toad engine in some way. But I think that Sprite will still be able to compete with 3 Elf, which is fine. And like you said, Simeon, I think there's better ways of playing Sprite than to just try and turbo out Toad. There's a lot of interesting builds going on with the Tri Brigade stuff that I've seen on quite a few people that our locals try out. The Live Twin, Evil Twin stuff is a deck that can make Toad anyway because of the Kiss Kills and Aqua. Tears is just the best deck, and it will continue to be until it gets hit. But that doesn't mean to say that it's a tier 0 format. I don't think.
No.
I think like I say, the ban list was fine, but it should have done more. It was. I'm feeling a strong 6 to a light 7 on this ban list.
Yeah, I also think that there was hits that were necessary, like for example, Snow. Snow should have been banned a long time ago.
It should never come back.
Snow shouldn't have come back.
Come off the list. Because it was basically in Punk Raid format, you could send snow as a way to stop your board from getting like
Mm.
completely obliterated.
Mhm.
And even in like his list, you could send it as a last ditch resort,
Mhm.
so that if you ever wanted to, if you got Dark Ruler, and then your board got broken apart, then you still had some form of interruption.
Yeah, I'd say the fundamental problem with snow is essentially that it gives too much advantage when you're already ahead. So it's like if I have the resources in my graveyard, there's literally you can't even call by it if I have enough cards in my grave because I'm just going to chain it again. And so it's just
Yeah.
like it's converting all of the, and you have to remember as well, like what these decks do is they go through a bunch of cards, so they've got an advantage of those cards again, and then Snow gets more advantage of them later on. So it's like it's the same kind of problem as the access code problem, where it's like I've used these cards of materials and then I'm banishing them as a kind of fake cost, but it's like it's not really a cost. I've already got the advantage. So I definitely agree with that. I would say that I'm also similar to you, Dan. That I wasn't really happy with the list personally. I feel like the list I already knew. I mean, we already know Konami does the list as mainly as a marketing tool. But when I saw the hits, I was disappointed. I was like, this is not acceptable. How did Tier completely escape? Like, I get on one hand that, like, yeah, you want to push other sets, but then it's like, what the heck? Sprite also just got released and they were fine with hurting Sprite, so...
Yeah.
I think it was a case that even with the hits that weren't centered around Power of the Elements, like it was just not enough. Like Reboot Band, great. Like card should either be at 3 or 0. Why is Call by the Grave not been put to 3 or 0?
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? It was like for every step forward, there was 2 steps back.
Yeah.
And I do want to talk for a moment about some of the limits as well. I think Spellbook of Judgment is one of those ones that everyone was really excited to see. But after extensive testing, I can confirm that the deck is pants.
It's
not that great.
We had multi-role power creep Spellbook of Judgment ages ago, so yeah.
Exactly. It's cool to have it back, but it's don't buy spellbooks.
I think if spellbooks had maybe at least 2 or 3 good quick plays, then maybe. But they literally have Spellbook of Fate, which isn't good. But that's their best one.
And even that's conditional.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's that's their best. Everything else is actually not good. So
it's just a slower striker.
I've said this before and I'll say it again. The best prophecy card is Alistair the Invoker.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
But other than that, I mean the unlimits were fine. There's nothing really to shout home about. Yeah. I think Draco Face-Off could have come to 3.
I was surprised that it didn't, to be honest, since the Ignis stuff was coming out.
Maybe they're saving it because there's that new Draco Slice support coming out soon.
Yeah, Ignis.
Maybe they're saving it for that. I don't know.
Yeah. But I also Nadir Servant and Fusion Destiny coming back to 3 was seen from a mile away because we had Invoke Shadol DPE around when we still had Sword Soul and Tri-Brigade third up, and then the list got hit. And then everyone stopped playing it because Brave then came out, and then
I think DP is definitely going to see some more play again, I don't know how I feel about that, to be completely honest, because I feel like if a deck's playing specifically the Dragoon engine or the DPE engine, now that Verte is gone, it means that your deck's probably not. It means your deck's probably not where it could be, if you know what I mean.
If you haven't played that engine, I feel like you're already you're wanting to have a plus for a deck that can't.
You're making a rogue deck better, essentially.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. It's just
for that reason, I think it's cool that Fusion Destiny is back to 3. Personally, I'm quite happy about it. But I think the only deck that can fully really just capitalise off it is Striker, and Striker have 3 Mind, 3 Demise anyway. Yeah. So whatever.
We all saw PK list back in the day using that, using the Alpha Scorpio combo to grab the Fusion Destiny from deck. It would set up Scythe and DP that way. But I don't know, it feels weird.
Yeah, definitely. I think it will be interesting to see if people try and bring back those kind of invoked Dogmatica DP kind of builds again. I don't think, again, Verte I think was a big kind of thing that held those decks together, but I think part of the reason they actually brought back Nadir Servant at least is obviously, as we've seen, there's a lot of Dogmatica stuff coming out in the future. Dogmatica, at least on the ritual side, is getting a lot stronger. So a big part of that is really increasing the strength of of that engine of the whole Dogmatica ritual side. I think one thing that is nice, but it's only really going to matter for the next few days, is Benten. Benten going back through is actually very, very nice for Drytron. I feel like, guys, just for anyone listen, if you want to dominate DB, and right now is a good time to, I would suggest playing Drytron. The deck is very unfair. It's not going to be like that forever. You've only got till about the 20th when DD Crow the deck comes out, but up until then, I can definitely say that 3 Ben 10 in Drytron is going to be incredibly busted. Like it, you wouldn't
on the subject of the new archetype, the Bestial, whatever it's called. Obviously, Darkwing Blast is coming out soon. Is there anything in particular that you guys are looking forward to?
Oh, busted me! Busted.
Busted. I love that deck. It's literally so it allows you to play another engine with branded, which is great. But it also means that you have 3 different cards. The DD Crows.
Yeah, you have 9 DD Crows in your deck now. Yeah,
and they're quick effects as well, and summon a body.
Yeah.
I think the engine. I don't know. I think you play 2 and 1. I don't know the names. I haven't really looked at them.
Yeah, so
I think that'll see side deck play 100%.
Yeah. Well, so the thing is, I would say that a lot of people are going to be main decking it because it's also kind of like a pseudo chaos / dragon engine. So there's different variants. There's the branded variant, which you're playing a big count. You're playing up to like 12. I'm seeing some people play Dragon Maids with it as well. I'm seeing some people play Dragon Link. So it's really interesting to see. So I think both as an engine and as its own deck or hybridized with another deck, I think it's going to have huge potential. And I think in tier format especially, this is the perfect deck to have around.
I also think that like another engine to keep watch on is the Shatra stuff comes out in the next set.
Yeah.
I think we only get a few of them.
We get Fenrir, we get Unicorn, Ogre. They're like the 3 searches for each type monster spell trap. You get the first extra deck monster, a continuous spell that lets you normal summon them, and that's it. So depending on the rarity, I think if you want to get these cards, I think you should get them early because obviously when Photon Hyper Nova or whatever it is comes out, the deck is going to be... I'm not going to say the deck's going to be insane because I've been testing it and it is very good, but it isn't. Everyone thought Sprite was going to be tier 0 and that flopped. So
I would say I wouldn't call Sprite a flop, but
you get what I mean.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, but I would say that as far as Shatra, I'd say after the second wave of support is when it gets really nuts.
Yeah, but I think Fenrir is a card that's just worth having because it is just Pancratops better.
Yeah, and it's searchable as well with the card on it. I think like the also really nice thing about the set as well is we get Splind as well, which is the new Sprite monster. But I still think that's better in a tier deck because of the fact it says you can send any level 2 from your deck to the graveyard. And then you can also, I think it's like when your opponent special summons a monster, you can detach material from an exceed you have, bounce back the monster.
Yeah,
and I think
someone was telling me about that. What's his name? Someone was telling me about that yesterday. That's what I did, and I was like, "Wow, that's really, really good."
I think it's really nice as well because it gives you like another link 2 to go into, and it just gives one Sprite another level of intricacy because you're deciding whether or not you want to set up your elf or your splind, and then you also have another area that you can go into with a tier deck because you can just keep that on board. Elf, and then have another form of interaction, which is quite nice. But
it'll be interesting to see what happens to Sprite. Like I do think, I think it's the general consensus tier is the undisputed best deck, but it will be interesting to see where Sprite goes because I think that deck has a lot of potential. The cards are just naturally very, very good. Sprite Elf is probably the new Hulk in terms of how strong it is as a link, and like it'll be really interesting to see what people do. But I am quite excited for that. So,
I like the deck, and I think that now, now that it's been hit, people will look at it with different eyes. And once Splendid and that double cross trap comes out, like you said, Nate, it is going to be a lot stronger. So it's not going away by any stretch. Yeah, but definitely. I know I've just done a complete 180 from saying Sprite flop man to like, nah, the deck's decent. It'll be interesting to see what happens with it. But I do think Sprint is going to be one of the best cards in 100%. Darkwing Blast, and it's one I'd recommend getting sooner than later. What else is in there?
Here's
Darkwing Blast.
but sorry, I'll just repeat it. Tears get a new fusion as well, which is now in a gate, which is quite nice because it meant that. It's your tears board now ends on something other than Draco's Tepelia Kaleido.
Yes,
and
which is quite good.
But like, you also get you get Screams as well, which is it mills 3 or something along those lines. I can't remember what Scream does, but I know that there is another card that comes out in the set for the Tears.
So let me go. Is it? It's not Crime, is it?
No, it's not Crime. Yeah. I think it's Screams. It's a continuous spell.
So Tier Element Scream, yeah, you're right. If a monster is normal special summoning, you control Tier or Visa Starfrost, you can send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard. Also, all face-up monsters your opponent controls will lose 500 attack for the rest of the turn. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can add a Tier trap from your deck to your hand. So I'd say this is a good card, at least one off. Because you can Sulliek and stuff now.
I think that just adds another level of intricacy. And it also has the nice effect of if it is milled, then you do get like a plus from the tier names. But yeah, playing that when having a copy of that at least when you get the Ishizu cards, just being able to mill 3, hit an Ishizu name.
Definitely big. Very big.
Put D shifter to 6, man.
Yeah, every time people complain about D-Shifter personally, I always think the same thing, which is that look, if you're allowed to mill 8 cards on your turn or 13 cards on your turn with Tia, I should be allowed to say all of those cards go to the banish zone instead.
100%. I said this on the last cast, but Yu-Gi-Oh is just pick your flavor of unfair.
Exactly.
So don't come to me about, oh, you turned off my deck, man, when your entire point of your game is to turn off my deck.
Yeah.
Your entire point of like the tier strategy is to basically interact on your opponent's turn. That's literally, it's basically.
Definitely, I agree, because some of the stuff Tier is going to be doing next format is going to be insane.
The Ishizu stuff coming up is going to be I'm legitimately just. I don't want to say I'm thinking about taking a break because I don't I love Yu-Gi-Oh, but
yeah,
I think it's going to be a very, very toxic format, and the mirror match is going to be absolutely cursed.
Yeah, I think the thing as well is just like, because me and Dan have our invites already for Euros, we can at least take a step back and see how the meta is evolving. And I do think that with Magnificent Maidens literally just around the corner, the support that we get from that set in particular means that more meta staple cards will be available. So like for anyone who was looking to pick up Sword Soul cards and also other I think what's the other reprints from that set? I know that Sword Soul, there's striker cards, there's obviously
Atlas the Soldier, the Link. The full list hasn't been leaked, but as this is replacing Maximum Gold, it seems, for this year, I think we can safely say there'll be some decent cards in there.
Oh, Maximum Gold is my favourite set.
It's got to be someone's favourite set, perhaps. So it's yours.
I see the gold rarity and I get so excited. I'm like, yeah. That's like,
to be fair, out the gold letter rares, they're dope.
Yeah, I like Maximum Gold. I spent a lot of money on Maximum Gold. Let's just say that. Like I was fine with emptying half my paycheck into that. Like everything that I've got.
I think Maximum Gold is a really good set though. It allows you to like get more accessible.
That's what I'm saying about the because a lot of the rares, like not the full gold rares, if you want to say, like the ones that were just like a regular rare with gold foiling. There were some great reprints in there. You had like a lot of staples, weird cards that were money for some reason. So I think if Magnificent Mavens is replacing Maximum Gold for this year, then it's going to be a good set, 100%. Yeah, strikers get a kaiju in there. How unfair?
You know what?
Did they need more stuff?
When Linkage and Hamp were announced, I was like, why does Striker need more stuff? But I'll be honest, Striker's being power crept at this stage. So you know what? I'm okay.
You know what it is? It's not even that Striker's like, it's power crept. It's just like, why is this deck still around?
Yeah, I agree. It's also the thing is like Linkage as a card in a vacuum is busted because your entire Striker combo can.
What does it do again? Let me pull it up.
It special summons a Link in the extra deck. So
if you do special, This is busted. What the fuck?
It's quite strong, isn't it? Yeah.
You don't need to see Ray or engage. You literally just have to see this in open hand, and you're like, I have full combo.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very, very good. So essentially, because and they weren't normally, well, not sometimes they were, but they weren't properly special summoning their links most of the time anyway. So it's not a disadvantage that linkage is not properly special summoning them, because that's not how they really work. So it's definitely a very good card for them. But I'm willing to bet that while we probably will still see striker players top, I don't think it's going to make the deck meta in any sense of the word. I think it's just a nice new support to keep it kind of relatively in pace with other slower.
It's just legacy support in it, like at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It can contend, but I don't think it'll be topping any events anytime soon with the way that the format is shaping up. It's too slow.
Yeah. You say that, and then Laurie's going to top out a Darkwing Blast event again with Strike.
Yeah, again, I'd say it all top. Striker players always top because Striker's a bit like Burning Abyss, where there's a lot of versatility and a lot of skill expression in the deck. Burning Abyss, I'd say it's more to do with the deck building skill expression as opposed to how the deck is piloted. But the point being is that there's a lot of options in Sky Striker because it's a small, efficient, compact engine. But we won't see the average Sky Striker player top. No, I don't think that's going to be.
No, it's a deck that rewards a good player for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. One thing I am a bit upset about. So just this morning, I saw the reveal for the new Goatee archetype, the new cards, and I can confirm they are crap. They are very crap.
Just before we go on, I think one of my favorite, like whenever anyone brings up the Goatee cards, the only thing I think of is Jake from Sank Squad messaged me saying, let's see what these Goatee cards are saying. And I don't think I replied to the message because I was busy or something. Yeah. Then 2 hours later, he just messaged me saying, "These fish are shit." And that's just what I think about Goatee now. It just makes me think of that message. So hold tight, Jake.
It's just, it's not.
It had so much potential, and then all of a sudden, just gone.
Oh yeah, so much potential. Like,
do you know what it is?
Actually, because I've never read a Goatee card in my life.
So it seemed like we were going to have another deck that could play with Dimension Shifter, basically. Because it has this interesting gameplay loop of essentially synchro summoning and then banishing a lot of stuff and then synchro summoning on your opponent's turn, because all of the level 2s have a natural quick effect that says if they're banished, special summon on your opponent's turn, and also during your opponent's turn, they can synchro summon. The problem is it has the typical problem that Konami does sometimes with archetypes where they overbalance them for no reason. It's funny how you can release Shatra and this in the same set. It doesn't make sense to me. All of the cards have weird restrictions and stuff like that. Like they're really scared of people making these like level 10 fish synchros on your opponents. There's like 4 synchros you can make, by the way, because they lock you into fish synchros on your opponent's turn. So you're not using a Baron or anything. You're just
what's that fish that's like an E-Telly for 5?
Yeah, Colcanth. So yeah, you can tell they're scared of Colcanth becoming busted, but even
just
with
ban it if you're that scared.
I mean, Colcanth loses to literally every hand trap in the game. Like, it's not searchable, or it's not normally searchable anyway. And then it loses to pretty much every hand trap in the game, so it doesn't even count as a real card, to be honest. Like, one of the things that a lot of the Goatee players were saying on the Discord, which I agree with, is that if anything, we were hoping more for cards that would push it more towards a control-y strategy than a kind of combo strategy. But the support is more towards kind of spamming synchro summons, but that just doesn't really suit the archetype because there's more efficient. If you want to synchro summon a lot, play Sword Soul. I wouldn't play Goatee. So
you might say there's plenty more fish in the sea.
Perfect timing. Yeah. So the next thing I want to move on to is a little bit of a debate. So I was having this discussion with someone yesterday, and essentially it's this. We talked about it a tiny bit last week, but it was essentially the notion that combo decks take more skill than trap decks. Now, so
are we saying trap decks or just control decks? Because I think there's a difference between a trap deck and a control deck.
So I'll give the exact scenario so that we know the kind of deck. So one of the players was playing Tia, and another player was playing Eldritch. And the Tia player was saying essentially that setting 5 traps and passing doesn't take any skill. That was his opinion. So what do we think?
I don't agree with that, genuinely, because whilst your combo deck requires, like, your combo deck, the way that you get better with it is if you learn the lines to every single board you can make, and then you'll just do that. With trap decks, it's a little bit more time precise, because you have to know when to flip that specific card in that specific scenario, and you have to know when to time your effects correctly. So I wouldn't say playing a trap deck takes less skill. It just requires you to be very, very good with knowing the timing of your cards and obviously knowing how to control the game better. Because you hear all the time that people are complaining that flipping floodgates takes no skill whatsoever, when in actuality, it could actually affect the style of your gameplay throughout the entirety of that match, and you need to know exactly where you want to go and how to affect the game state in your favor.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. Everything you just said, I 100% agree with, and I think you've really effectively put it. I agree with that. I think the biggest thing that I think people don't respect a lot of trap decks. I didn't even respect it until I forced myself to play a trap deck for a format to understand it. But yes, that is exactly that. In a trap deck, if you make a mistake and you flip your Solemn Strike at the wrong time, a lot of times you just lose because those are the only cards you're going to see for that turn. You're going to see 5 cards. Whereas when you're playing tier, you're probably going to see 20 cards in that turn. So if you make a mistake, a lot of the time it doesn't matter. Or you don't really have an option to make a mistake. Every decision you make is a good decision.
Yeah.
So I think, and this is going to be it's going to be weird coming from me. People who know me are going to be like, "Are you really saying this?" But I don't disagree with the tier player in this scenario, but I don't necessarily agree with them either. So the reason for me saying this is it depends entirely on the trap deck and the trap in question, because you're very right in what you say about the Solemn Strike. But if you know, well, no, I don't even say if you know. If you go first and you draw, I don't know, there can be only one, and let's say goes a match and a couple of other traps, to get your engine going. You set them and pass. Your opponent normal summons, I don't know, let's say Mo Yi. If you flip there can be only one, if they don't have an out, you do probably just win the game.
Can I give a counter to that?
Sorry to cut you off there, but game 2 and 3 is going to be so much harder because against game 2 and game 1, if you're playing like a trap deck, the odds are stacked in your favor because a lot of people aren't going to have that many outs. But post side deck, it's a myth. But in terms of trap decks that are more reactive and aren't just Draco, 11 floodgates, whatever, and you're playing things like Solemn Strikes, your DDGs, punishments, whatever. Stuff like that, you are 100% correct in saying if you time them incorrectly, you lose the game, and because you're probably not seeing as many cards as a combo player, you are going to have to think about the resources so much more. So while I do see the sides for both arguments, I don't really know where Ross played Control for the majority of their life. So
I want to give a counter to the scenario you gave, because while I agree that, for example, in that specific scenario, I'll flip it and say, what if as a Drytron player, I open Alpha, Zeta, and Talents?
I don't disagree. I completely agree with you.
That's why, for example, when people often say floodgates are OP, it's not fair. There's very few floodgates that are searchable. So it's just that they got lucky and they drew floodgates. And also, if you've played a trap deck, you'll know that you can't just shove your deck full of 50 floodgates. It doesn't work. You just lose.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, and so it's if I draw really well in a trap deck, it's an instant win. But then it's also, if you draw really well in a combo deck, it's an instant win as well. That was literally what happened yesterday. I drew Alpha, Zeta, Gamma, Prosperity, and the field spell. So he had interruptions, but it didn't matter. I think he halfway through my combo, he interrupted me, and then I was like, okay, I still have 2 more extenders, and I think I made vanities and 3 summons as well. So it was I made vanities. You can't even nib me now. And so I see it as I think that's my perspective on it. That yes, there are scenarios that trap players will play, and it feels like there's 0 skill, but I think that applies to combo players as well. I think a lot.
I do genuinely completely agree with you, and I think it's really good that you brought that point up.
Yeah.
So my general stance on the argument is, I don't care. I'm gonna be real. Just play whatever deck you want. Every deck has a hard counter to it.
Yeah.
If you don't draw an out, you don't draw an out. That is just Yu-Gi-Oh, unfortunately, and that's why you have to know what you're side decking. And I think the skill in side decking and things like that is where you can really see a player's resource game and skill and decision trees and things like that. But
I agree. Like, so I'll give an example. It was when I played against Jamie in final round of OTS Championship. Like, he knew exactly what he was doing throughout the entirety of that game. I felt like it was a struggle, and I know that Jamie's a skilled player because no matter which locals he enters into, he always tops by an amount of skill and also being very resourceful with his gameplay. He knows when to trigger his like Eldritch effects. He knows when to set the floodgates. He knows when to activate them, and he knows how to capitalize on the game. And I felt like it was a massive struggle going into that first game, and throughout the entirety of that match, it was a sweat because I had to know what to counter just playing to certain floodgates.
Yeah.
So I can see it from both sides of the coin, being that I've played combo decks and I've also played control. So each player has a fair amount of evidence to their side, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to personal opinions. Whether you want to be a control player and flip your floodgates and say that that's how you want to play the game, that's completely fine. And it comes to what Dan said earlier about pick your poison, because you have a card game that has thousands of different cards at their disposal. You're obviously going to play one that is, one, good to your playing style, and two, allows you to capitalize on the type of gameplay you want. So, yeah, it's at the end of the day, it's all up in the open.
Yeah, I'd say as well, one thing that's quite unique about Yu-Gi-Oh! Compared to other card games, not to this is not an insult to other card games, but I would say Yu-Gi-Oh! The skill expression in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is very different in my opinion. When you're playing Magic or when you're playing Pokemon, I don't want to use Pokemon because I've never played Pokemon. So if you play Magic or if you play Hearthstone or if you even play, what's that League One called again? Whatever the League One is called. But if you play any of those card games, you'll find that comboing, at least in one turn, isn't really a thing. You don't really find that in other card games. If anything, almost every other relevant card game limits how many actions you can take in a turn. Yu-Gi-Oh! Doesn't, and some decks even encourage you to take loads of actions in a turn. You get rewarded for these really long, intricate combos. And so there's this inherent dichotomy between if I'm playing a deck and I take 5,000 actions, that's how there's a certain level of skill expression just by doing that, because I do this, then I do that, then I do this, then I do that, and I've turned one card into 7 cards. Whereas when you're playing, for example, Magic or something, you're probably building these resources over several turns, and then you have that big payoff at the end of the game where you do this, like 3 or 4 cards in a... It's basically the equivalent of flipping 3 or 4 floodgates in a row that win the game for you. But,
and I think the biggest reason is because Yu-Gi-Oh! Doesn't have a mana system.
It doesn't have energy, so there's no limit to what you can do in a turn, Yeah,
exactly. There's no resource system in this game, like compared to Magic or compared to Vanguard.
You can argue
or compared to
not really.
Not really. Even then, that's a negative.
But
because you start at 1,000.
I don't know, me personally, though, I like that. I actually like there not being an energy system in Yu-Gi-Oh! I think that's what makes it interesting and unique. Cause
I agree.
Yeah, I've played other card games, and like Yu-Gi-Oh! Generally, it does feel really cool how explosive the turns can get sometimes, where it's just like, people come and look at the board and it's like, what the heck is going on here? I don't really get that. In other games, it's a slower burn. But it's funny.
So much more interesting.
A lot of the people who don't like floodgates in Yu-Gi-Oh! Oh my god, don't play another card game. You'll hate that shit. Floodgates is card games. Like,
I was watching 2 people play Pokemon the other day, the TCG, and I was reading some of the cards and I was like, these are busted. If we had these in Yu-Gi-Oh! It would be so unfair. But then you think it's a different game entirely. But also,
like, quite variance based, and also have a big drawing system where they go through like half their deck in a turn. And I think also in terms of like, this is something I realized as well, when you play when you play like a combo deck, you're essentially trading those floodgates for monsters, which are floodgates in general. Like, if you're playing like the Tears, when the Tears deck first came out, you were ending on a Winder, which is essentially a floodgate.
It's just summon limit, but better.
You're making walking floodgates anyway in your combo. So how can you say that, playing a trap deck is any less skillful when you're trying to get to a floodgate yourself to stop those floodgates? and it's a constant cycle.
One of the things I say is like so yeah, like I said before, I played I forced myself to play Eldritch for 4 man. One of the things that I realized, especially when playing it, and I had to kind of end up respecting, was that almost every single trap deck is like overbalanced in terms of how efficient they are at killing you. Like sometimes when I'm playing like I don't know, actually, so I use example Drytron. I've been playing Drytron recently just to have fun before Biscuit comes out. And like Drytron, if my opponent ever kind of gives me a hint of room, like if I know almost certainly if the turn comes back to me, I'm going to kill my opponent because like that's just how the deck works. But it's like with pretty much every trap deck, even Eldritch, we can put a 3500 beater on the board. It's like sometimes it's just sad because your opponent can't do anything, but you can't kill them.
The
Like,
only deck, the only trap deck I've ever seen or been able to OTK with has been branded Eldritch.
Yeah.
And you have to go second and open a sick hand.
Nuts. Exactly.
Yeah.
And
But
even
in
that,
terms
it's like
of-
you've hybrided it, you put a spice in it to make it do that.
Yeah. Like that's not the core trap deck. That's just like an engine that happens to go well with it.
Yeah. So it's definitely it's funny. I think it was at that. So I went to Nottingham or Northampton. I don't know, somewhere that begins with N. I went to on the weekend, and so one of my mates was playing Mathmech, and his opponent was playing Runic Sprite, and then the Mathmech player, the Sprite player, essentially missed the line. And the Mathmech player had a monster just in defense position. Sprite player couldn't be over it because he didn't have any of his banishes left, and so he just had to scoop because it's like Sprite player had resources and stuff, but he literally just couldn't be over it because it was literally. And even though Sprite Runic isn't a trap deck, it's a similar kind of concept. So it was like
It's a control deck.
there's just not enough power to beat over a certain card, and then you just kind of lose. Cause
Yeah, a lot of the times in control deck, you are sacrificing that brute force.
Yeah. Which is it's part of the game. Yeah, and like I said, I actually do like that. And I like the fact that different decks have different identities, and the identities are more than just my picture's slightly different, and I do 2 damage instead of 3. It's like no, decks do feel very different to play. I'd say playing Drytron as a combo deck feels very, very different to playing Infernoble as a combo deck, which also feels very, very different to Spiral, how they used to play. All the combo decks do feel very different.
Aversely, playing a trap deck like Labyrinth is very different to playing a trap deck like True Draco.
100%. Even True Draco and Eldritch as well is another good example. Completely different. Even though both rely on floodgates, they play completely differently, and it's really, really nice and interesting to try. So, yeah, I do like that. I do think it's very, very cool. But
You're just forgetting the best trap deck. You're forgetting the Unchained.
oh my gosh, you know what? Yeah, Unchained. I'll say, by the way, guys, I always say this. Unchained is actually probably one of the best rogue decks that's ever been released, and people just don't respect it. And this is why Unchained always. I think in the last 3 formats, Unchained has always had at least one premier top, because it's actually one of the best rogue decks. I'm going to say this, guys. Look, Unchained is actually very, very good right now, in case you didn't know. Don't be surprised when it tops. And then when I put it high in my tier list, this is to the audience, when I put Unchained in my tier list, don't be surprised and think that I'm just capping. No, Unchained is a very, very good deck. It just suffers from the problem that basically all of its normal summons are a bit janky. Like, it just normal summons and passes. But that deck is insane. And it can main deck shifter. So
I think it's interesting that you touch on road decks there, Fabs, because one thing I did want to talk about is the difference in how it feels with winning with a road deck than it does with a meta deck. So, like a little example case, me and Jake have been working on Crystal Beasts the majority of the weekend, as it's Jake's favourite deck of all time, and I bought the deck because I like common hand traps. I was like, I might as well try these, and it's actually like a really decent resource engine. I didn't realise that they have a 3000 attack E-Telly that they can just that they can just put out, and like all the spells are like just really good advantage. Like, don't get me wrong, like the deck's not great, but it's better than people are giving it credit for. But yeah, I went to a locals last night. I went X2 with it, and I played against like actual like meta decks, and I think my favourite match was against one of the Sanctum Squad members. Shout out to Ryan. He was on Sprite, and it went to game 3 time, and I think there was nothing I could have done to have won the game based on the scenario of the game state. But the fact that I got to game 3 and I was putting on that much pressure, like with a rogue deck, like it just made me feel better about it. So yeah, I just wanted to bring that up quickly.
Yeah, definitely, it's a nice. It's also a bit of like pride as well when it's like you can take that rogue deck and actually compete with the meta. It's a nice feeling.
100%.
Yeah, and I would say as well, it's like that's what sometimes a bit demoralizing when it's like you've been playing meta for the whole format. And it just sometimes feels like,
It's a breath of fresh air, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like you play a rogue deck that just does something new and fresh, and especially if it's a deck that you actually like as well, like maybe you like the artwork or you think it's got cool lore or something, then it's like it's even better feeling. Again, for me, for example, yeah, that's why I played Dark Pools for like 3 years because I really like the cards. So yeah, I agree with that. I think as well when you play meta sometimes as well, it can kind of drain you a bit because there's almost like a pressure. Like I'm playing meta, so now I have to do well. Whereas sometimes when you're playing rogue, it's like if I do badly, I can just blame it on the deck anyway. So it's like, it's like I was playing the shit deck anyway. I don't care that I lost. Yeah.
No, you are right. I think it does. It all depends on what you want to get out of the game, I suppose. But I do think that everyone should have like a pet deck that they just kind of not fall back on so much, but like if the meta's getting a bit much, or like you just want to play some casual games with friends.
Yeah,
I think it's still 100% always worth having one of those strapped and ready to go.
Definitely. I think that's 100% important. And it's just good for longevity of the game as well, that we have people still interested in old decks and stuff, which is why I think a lot of the old formats still kind of have potential because people see cards that they remember from before. Even though it's not a whole deck, they'll see cards and stuff they remember from before, and it'll attract them to the game. Yeah. But, guys, what we're going to do is we're going to close off the show here. So, yeah, thank you guys for watching another awesome episode of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Show. And also, what I want you guys to do is put in the comments if there are any interesting threads, interesting Yu-Gi-Oh! News that you want us to discuss on the next episode, and we'll be sure to get to it. So, yeah, guys, that is Fabs and the Sanctum Squad. I'm going to be signing off. Yeah, peace. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much for listening. Thank you for having us once again. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.